We have football positional battles to talk about. Who on offense, who on defense is fighting for a spot, who's going to win them. We got a Bucky Cast reunion to talk about it all in today's show. We have all of that and more on today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this one of your first listens every day as we continue just to build that Badger community. I also want to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. And we're going to bring our guests on today, esteemed, distinguished guests. We got Justin and John. We got the original Bucky Cast back together. We're going to have a really good talk about positional battles. Guys, gentlemen, welcome back.
Thank you for having us.
One of you can talk now.
Well, Ryan, you're the quarterback now. It's totally different.
Yeah, I kicked it to you guys. Welcome back. Right. And you just stared at me dill-eyed.
No, I'm good.
Let's jump into it. So we have positional battles. We're going to just jump across offense, defense. We're going to start on offense. And I'm going to kick it to John to start with. What's a positional battle on offense? Kick it to John. Positional battle on offense that you're interested in and you want to see how it works out here.
You switched it up on me. The positional battle I'm looking at right now is the right guard position. Left guard is locked down by Tyler Beach right now. And he's not going to the bench anytime soon. So at right guard, Michael Furtney, who is a fifth-year senior out of Michigan, not a bad football player. He's shown in the past in limited time, but at the same time, the Badgers have Tanner Bortolini floating around, and Bortolini is just too good to be left on the bench. So there's really sort of a percolating war there, unless Bortolini winds up at right tackle, as to who you start at right guard. Is it Fertney? Is it Bortolini? And I honestly think you can't keep Tanner Bortolini on the bench. He's got to be out there in the top 5 guys. He's too good of a run blocker. He's too good in pass sets, and he's got perfect guard size. He might be the next good NFL player from Wisconsin on that offensive line. It's going to depend on how Bob Bostad wants to work it out, but that's going to be one to watch coming into fall camp.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I honestly think that you're going to have to get Bortolini involved, worst case, or Furtney. One of the two is going to take that spot. I think what happens is whoever doesn't ends up turning into the Bill Nagy swingman role. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see them play a ton of snaps. It's just going to be spread out a little bit more, potentially across the line. But I think that that's likely the goal. I think we're going to be headed back to the old days of whatever the first line is for better or worse, for the most part, going to be the guys who are getting reps, with the occasional breather here and there against certain opponents.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point with Bob Bostad coming in. I don't think we're going to see the rotation quite as heavy as we used to. And then, John, this kind of to your point, it might be a little more solidified. And I think they got to find Bortolini a role. He's been impressive, like literally since he got on campus. So Fertney's paid his dues, but he's probably a guy that's going to be that versatile backup across the line, would be my guess. Justin, offensive positional battle, where are you going?
Sure. I'm going tight end. I feel pretty strongly that this is a position that we could have 4 or 5 guys take the reins here. At the position right now, we're looking at, for right off the bat, you'd probably say that Jack Eschenbach is probably one of your starters. Clay Cundiff, coming back off of injury, is a guy who has a very good chance at also taking a role there. Jalen Franklin, one of the few guys that was actually available for the spring. We'll get to see if they've, maybe potentially built a few packages for him as a guy who has a kind of a little bit different skill set. And then there's a few other guys there that are more the blocking role. I mean, you have Hayden Rucci, who's back off of injury, who I think for the most part agree is probably their blocking tight end. And Cam Large is probably his backup if we're going to look at that. And you're kind of looking at this and saying, none of these guys have really taken a ton of snaps. So there's not really like a defined person that you're looking at and saying, this guy has a death grip on this. We could see fall camp where we have no clue who the starter is at either of these positions. and we end up coming out of it, and it's like, wow, okay, those two guys are starters, and I wouldn't have expected either one of them to be the guy.
I think Clay Cundiff, based on if he's healthy, if he's totally healthy, I think he's going to be the starter at the H-back. I think Hayden Rucci, again, if he's healthy, has that blocking tight end position locked down. But I think Cundiff of all of them has the best playmaking potential because he can just obviously get open. He may not be the fastest, the most athletic, but we saw last season where he, got open and made plays.
Gun to your head, who's the literal best tight end on the roster?
That's so tough because you got to look at it from a physical tool standpoint, and I don't know if we know.
They've all been hurt too. It's not all, but
I mean, you could make Jack. You could say Jack Pugh. I mean, he could be the guy. He just might be a little bit more raw than the other guys.
Yep.
I mean, he's a 4-star tight end.
Gun to my head, I'm still going to say Clay Cundiff.
I would agree with that.
We've seen that in games at least. We've seen him be able to get behind defenses.
I think there's a solid chance they may go with 2 receiving threats too. If somebody proves that they can be a viable blocker, we potentially could see a lot more 2 tight end sets this year with guys running out.
Doesn't it feel like, and this, I think this is unfortunate, but it doesn't feel like Jalen Franklin, there's literally nothing there.
It depends on if Chris Herring actually lights a fire under him. Franklin's clearly the most athletic tight end on the roster. I saw him bury some guys in person against Purdue in the run game, but can they just ever get what they want out of him? It feels like a missed opportunity there where they moved him from outside linebacker where he was really good to tight end just because they needed a body.
Well, the other part of that too is you kind of look at it and go, how much of this is on the tight ends? The passing game in general last year was hard to deal with. So looking at any of these guys, they could be doing the right things on the field. We honestly don't totally know. If nobody's seeing them, it's hard to say.
Because the passing game has essentially been broken for a couple of years now, and it's hard for a tight end like Jalen Franklin, who's not going to be the blocking guy, to really flash, if the passing game's broken. Well, let me go to here really quick. With Bobby Ingram coming in, Chris Herring moving over, do you think the tight ends will be featured a little bit more, knowing Bobby Ingram's background in the NFL as a tight ends coach, or is that just kind of a non-factor in your opinion?
I don't think we can even say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but if he's going to lean towards what they were doing in Baltimore, it wouldn't shock me to see them go heavier on the tight end.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's where I would like to see it go, but we can't guarantee anything right now.
Let me jump in with mine here. I'm very curious. I have a couple, but I'm just going to do one for the sake of brevity. Receiver rotation. I think for the most part, we would probably agree. We haven't talked about this beforehand, but Chimere Dike is probably the number 1. Who's the 2? Who's the 3? Who's the 4? Right? Because you have Markus Allen, Keontez Lewis, Skylar Bell, Dean Ingram moved over. I think that's going to be fascinating to see how that shakes out. And I don't have a great feel on it. I think Keontez Lewis is probably the 2, in my opinion, but I don't have a great feel.
There was a lot of buzz about Skylar Bell in spring ball, but I don't know. We hear this every year where somebody has a great spring and then they get to the fall and somebody else takes over or whatever changes. There are legitimately 3 or 4 guys who are probably pretty tightly bound together at that position, who it wouldn't shock any of us for that person to come through. I mean, Markus Allen would not shock me in the slightest if he ends up putting it together and has a great fall camp. Same with Keontez Lewis.
I think Markus Allen is the answer here. Stocky, well-built wide receiver, has some height to him. He can make plays. We saw that in the fall. So in limited playing time, granted, but Skylar Bell feels like it might be a little too soon for him. Keontez Lewis, honestly, we really don't know what we're getting. Markus Allen feels like the guy who's got the most experience. I think he's built sort of to succeed in Wisconsin's offense, and he has that. He can get around a defense. So I think he might be the solid number 2. And might eventually emerge as the number 1 as the season goes on.
That's bold, but I mean, I think he flashed on film. Like, he's definitely a guy who looked the part.
Yeah.
All right, coming up, we are going to do the same on the defensive side. Talk about which positions on the defensive side have some battles going on that we're interested in seeing how it plays out. So stick around for that. But first, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your number one source of your professional network. If you need to find someone to step into a job, if you need to schedule an interview, LinkedIn has a reach of over 810 million people. Add your job for free at LinkedIn. Spread the word that you're hiring so LinkedIn's network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools, screening questions. LinkedIn allows you to filter out applicants that are frankly just not a fit. So you're not wasting time. And the people interviewing for your job coming in for that position are going to be good fits. So they're not wasting their time either. It's a win-win. And really, with the market heating up, jobs harder, there's more jobs out there and more people hiring than ever before. You need something in your tool set, something that can help you get the right person in, fill the position, and move forward with that role. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you again, everybody, for making Locked On Badgers one of your first listens every day. We're going to bring Justin and John back onto the show. And I do want to give both you guys, especially John, you're continuing with the BuckyCast, an opportunity and a chance to just kind of, where can we find you? Where can people follow the podcast that you've continued working on?
We are still at the BuggyCast on Twitter. For email, oh God, please send us emails. We were desperate. Going back to the old days, we were desperate for emails. The BuckyCast43@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We've expanded out. Now, Instagram is still a work in progress, depending on how a bunch of old guys can figure out how to post videos and photos and stuff. But
keep
we
it
are
clean.
eager. What's that?
Keep it clean.
Keep it clean. Well, I can't guarantee that. No, we are definitely still trying to amp up our content. So give us a listen. We just had an episode on the EYBL, or a podcast on the EYBL basketball tournament that happened last week. And we are trying to provide content, when there is not, honestly, a lot of content going on. So give us a listen, folks.
No, definitely should. I've listened to all the shows so far. It sounds really good. The EYBL stuff was really in depth. You aren't going to find that in a lot of places. So, I definitely recommend giving it a listen and subscribing, and really just continue to build the Badger community. The more voices, the better.
Absolutely.
Let's continue jumping into this. Defensive positional battles. Justin, I would ask you where your podcast is, but I mostly just steal your time. And you come on.
I'm a consultant on Locked On Badgers.
Yeah, so that's kind of where you can find Justin, which is awesome.
We're gonna steal him back.
Listen, there's enough Justin for two people. Defensive positional battles. Justin, let's jump to you to start this one off. What's interesting to you on the defensive side in terms of positional battles?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say inside linebacker. I think Jordan Turner has one of those positions locked down. I don't know who's going to take that second spot. We've heard a lot of things coming out of spring ball that, who was it? Tatum Grass was making a big move at that position. There are a bunch of guys there that I think potentially could jump into that role. Jake Chaney, I think they probably feel pretty good about. You have, was it Mema Nanjameta?
Hey, crushed it.
Pretty close.
Muma.
There we go. All right, boy. He's another guy who has a lot of great physical tools. The question with that is, do they feel he's ready for it? He's a guy who's still he had more reps than Turner did this last year, but Turner just seems like he's a guy that just has that star quality to him, based on the limited snaps. The guy was incredibly productive for how little he was on the field. That second position, there's a ton of guys. Does Retzlaff make a chance? Mm-hmm. Make a big bump in the fall here and push for it. We've seen young linebackers before make a run to get playing time.
Yeah,
I'm really
that's a good
intrigued. One. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just going to say that's a good one, because I think Turner is, if you were to make a list of players that we'd be most excited to see this year kind of make their debut, I know he's played, but to really step in a big role, I think Turner's probably one of the top players on that list. But I think that second inside linebacker spot's going to be really interesting. So I think that's a really good one.
Don't anybody count out Patrick Chaney.
Yeah.
Because that dude is just all go all the time. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I think that there's a pretty good chance that we may see some rotating, at least at one of those spots. So it would not shock me. We'll see how the new linebacker coach likes to run his guys. Obviously, we did not do that a lot last year. I think we'll see more of it this year just because I think the drop-off will be lower.
Well, this is another area. There's a lot of areas in the team that are going to be impacted by this coaching carousel. New tight ends coach, running backs coach, offensive line. I mean, inside linebackers. So, a lot of times when that happens, coaches coach differently. They look for different things. It's all going to be under Wisconsin's umbrella philosophy. But you don't be surprised if you see a couple players take advantage of coaching moves while a couple players fall off. John, what about you? Defensive positional battles. What do you got?
Oh, that second outside linebacker position outside of Nick Herbig. CJ Getz is Wisconsin's best linebacker, in my opinion, at setting the edge in the run game. I don't think there's anybody better than him at just, driving the run back inside. That's a really valuable tool to have. And Getz is not devoid of being a playmaker. He also grabbed a couple of sacks last year. But Wisconsin has some absolute monsters behind him. Darrell Peterson just looks like a guy who's ready to explode onto the scene. A dude who can probably garner 8 to 9 sacks this next season just based off of playing in passing situations alone. And you also have TJ Bowlers, who is more of an elephant linebacker, like kind of a defensive end, outside linebacker hybrid. We'll see if he can elevate his game to that next step and be sort of like Getz and setting the edge against the run, but be a little bit at Peterson and getting at the quarterback. And then the dark horse, the elephant in the room, is Aaron Witt. Is he healthy? If he gets out there with that 6'6", 250 size, he could be a devastating threat.
And if he hasn't lost the burst.
Yes.
A great burst off the edge for a guy that size.
Yeah. If he still has his burst and the ability to get his hand up, he is just a guy who can not only get to the quarterback, he can clog passing lanes. And I don't want to downplay Caden Johnson. I just think Caden Johnson right now is kind of destined to replace Herbig at the other linebacker spot. But those main 4 guys for the down edge rushers, that's going to be a battle royale to see who gets the playing time. And I think we're going to honestly see all 4 of those guys in rotation this year.
I think I'm going to throw a curveball in on this. I think there will be some sub packages where we end up putting 3 of those guys in at once. When we get to obvious passing downs, there's just too much depth there. And especially some of those guys have good size. So if you have a guy who's pushing 250, 260 like Witt, you could throw him out there and he could probably hold up against, if a team goes crazy and tries to run a draw or something like that on a 3rd and 10,
Yep.
I think there's some risks that they're willing to take with some of the athleticism that they'd be able to throw out there.
Well, and we've seen it, like when another team is in 3rd and 11, one of the defensive linemen comes out. Isaiah Mullins will come out, for example. Like Mullins isn't going to be rushing the passer on 3rd and 11. So in that situation, and this is where I wanted to go and ask you guys this question, John, kind of specifically, because you brought this topic up. There was talk when Bowlers, Peterson committed that one of them might be a future defensive end anyway. Based on what you've seen, the body types, is that potentially Bowlers growing into that spot, or?
Bowlers could. I think Bowlers and Witt are the most likely to, and Isaac Ham, who's coming in as a true freshman. Peterson's just, he doesn't have the size on him to do that. Now, I say that, and then I have to cast back into the recent past and say, well, Chikwe Obashi was only about 240 pounds. Alec James is a little bit bigger.
He was bigger. He was like 260.
But I can definitely see like Witt and Bowlers and Ham filling that role of like being the down lineman in that nickel or dime package and rushing the passer, standing up, and having just 1 or 2 down linemen.
Yep. Well, let me give you mine quick. I'm really interested in corner, just how kind of the depth chart is going to shake out. Who's going to be the 3rd corner when nickel packages happen? I think we've got to a point where Alexander Smith is cornerback 1. I think most people assume Jay Shaw, just based on what he did at UCLA, 2nd team all Pac-12, is cornerback 2. But that's not set in stone at all. With Dort coming in and Clark coming in. and frankly, some of the younger guys as well. So I'm really interested in how the cornerback rotation is going to play out. A bunch of veteran guys, 4 seniors with the 3 transfers and Alexander Smith, plus 2 or 3 younger sophomore, junior type players. So that one's really interesting to me to see how Jim Leonard deploys when we go nickel. Who's that third cornerback?
Watch out for Max Lofi and Avion Jones in that nickel slot.
You think Avion Jones would be this year?
I think that Justin Clark right now is the president of that nickel position. But Jones and Lofi have shown the versatility to be able to play safety or cornerback. I think either one of those guys, maybe they don't pop, but I think they honestly have a chance to. I think Jones, of all the freshmen on the roster, in terms of the defensive backs, maybe outside of Brown, has the chance to play right away as a freshman.
That's interesting because we had John Garcia on, who was the Sports Illustrated recruiting director, and I asked him for one guy from last year's class he thought was underrated. And he went Jones right away. He said, Avion Jones is way underrated. Like, he's going to be a player. So, yeah, maybe you're dead on, and he's the true freshman that breaks into that group. I just think there's too many corners for Jones to break in right away.
There's a lot of experience. Yeah, he is a guy who could maybe work his way in over the season.
But that's a bold take. I like it. Yeah. All right, coming up, everybody, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We haven't had the 3 of us on for a while, so we wanted to talk a little football and a little basketball. We're going to get into a basketball player that we think might be a sleeper, might surprise people next year. So that's coming up next on the show. But first, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. Easy-to-use website. There's a reason we use it at Locked On. Great place for futures, props. If you want to take it, we've talked about Justin and I haven't actually pinged John on this, but the over-under for Wisconsin is 8.5. We're probably all going to take the over. We're all homers. We all took the over last year as well, and we saw how that turned out. But it's a great place, BetOnline, to get all your futures, NFL, baseball, basketball, easy-to-use website, online Vegas games, roulette, blackjack. So everything you want from a sports news, sports gambling, and Vegas casino online website, you can find on BetOnline. Fastest and easiest way to check on everything going on in the betting world. Grab your mobile device today. Learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thank you again, everybody, for making Locked On Badgers one of your first listens every day as we continue to build the community, continue to try to get new guests on the show. We're going to bring Justin and John back on as we tackle our last segment here. Hey, there they are. And we're going to talk basketball. We're going to talk basketball, and we're going to talk one player that you think maybe isn't either getting the hype it you deserves or someone who's just going to outperform expectations on next year's basketball team. John, let's kick it to you. Let's see who you got, who you think might be that player.
I'm going to go in a different direction than I was when this idea was originally broached to me. And I'm going to drive everyone nuts by saying Carter Gilmore. Carter Gilmore is going to have to play an outsized role this year. And, this is
Justin didn't love that answer.
No, he didn't. And
for those honestly, listening and not watching.
I was kind of expecting that. Gilmore, this is sink or swim time. If he does not fulfill that role, he's probably gone, or at least not on scholarship anymore. But he's got to fill that role. He's got to come in and contribute 8 to 10 minutes a game. 4 or 5 points a game, 3 or 4 rebounds, a steal or a block. He's just got to come in and contribute much more than he did last year when he was honestly a flat black hole in terms of coming in and playing, and was eventually replaced by Ben Carlson, who didn't do much better, but was at least serviceable. Mm-hmm. So this is Carter Gilmore's chance. I feel like at this point, he's got nothing to lose. This is his time to play up to the fact that he was considered a steal as a preferred walk-on. And maybe now, he's a junior. Maybe this is his chance to shine.
No, I like the pick. It all comes down to, so I recently talked about Carter Gilmore. We had a show where we ranked every Badger player coming into next year. Gilmore was pretty low on my list, obviously, but I did say, if he can shoot, he's going to help the team because I think the coaching staff trusts him. They put him out there for a reason. I think he makes a lot of smart plays. He spaces the floor. He understands where to pass the ball. I mean, I know that sounds like backhanded compliments, but those things matter. He's going to make right rotations defensively, but
He's just got to be able to score.
He's got to be able to hit open shots, right? If he can at least do that, because last year I think I looked it up, it was like 21% from three. I mean, he just couldn't shoot.
He was bad. Let's not sugarcoat it. He wasn't good. So,
but if he can shoot, I think he does enough of the little things well that he'll be a solid player. Justin, who do you got? What do you think of the Gilmore selection? By the way, I don't feel like you have a ton of faith in that one.
I actually think that he's going to get supplanted by Markus Allen.
Okay,
I think that now that he's going to have some level of comfort, I think that Ilver will be serviceable this year. I just think he's more athletically talented.
He definitely is that.
Shooting is his calling card. I don't know what to make of his shooting last year because you could tell that he was not comfortable. Like he looked like a true freshman in terms of a guy putting up shots. They just look rushed.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, they're going to be having the European trip coming up in the next couple weeks here. Hopefully that's some good reps for the young guys to get out there. My guy actually though is Isaac Lindsley. People don't seem to remember the fact that he was coming back off an injury, having left, UNLV to come to play at Wisconsin. He had hip surgery, didn't play at all for UNLV, and was basically coming back from that, last year. So he was essentially a true freshman, brand new on the program for Wisconsin. What I will say about him is we need to see some athleticism from him to prove that he can hold up defensively. I do think he can shoot. He's a guy who, when you watch him out on the court, plays at his tempo and seems comfortable with the ball in his hands, which I think is actually a huge factor. You can tell the guys who are really want to get the ball, get rid of it like a hot potato when they have it, and he does not seem like that guy, which is something that a lot of our young guys last year were deer in headlights whenever they touched the ball. So I actually think that he's probably one of our better shooters, and I think we'll see him actually have a fairly big role this year, especially with a lot of time open at the guard positions.
I like it. I mean, I love Lindsay. Lindsay was my pick for the segment as well. I love Lindsay in the sense of I think he's going to be I don't think he's going to be an all Big Ten performer next year, but I think he shoots the ball really well. I think his size is a plus for the 2 spot. He's well built. I just think he has to be healthy.
He's got good handles too.
I just think this team needs shooting so badly, right? Mm-hmm. At its simplest level, this team needs shooters, and I think he can shoot the ball, and I think he has enough size to play that 2 guard spot. Let me give you one more really quick because you kind of stole my Lindsay. I think Kamari Mcgee is going to be better than people realize. That's a guy that played on a bad team last year as a freshman, started basically most of the games, was our leading scorer, had 4 games over 20 points. I think he's going to be really good for us.
I don't know what to make of his shooting numbers based off that. I think a lot of people are down on him because he didn't shoot the ball great last year, but he effectively was the main man on a team that was devoid of everything else. So it's really hard to look at that and think anything of those numbers.
Let's remember he was a true freshman too.
Yep.
Shouldering an enormous load. And
he put up a good game against Minnesota.
Yes, he did.
He did.
For a terrible team, like just a terrible team. And I was thinking about this too, and let me kick it over you guys. We haven't had a really quick, who's the last quick guy we've had?
Oh, man.
I mean, I think
Devin Harris.
Right? I think he gives us a little bit of a quick element that we haven't had
Hughes,
in a long time.
Maybe?
Oh, that's maybe a good one. Maybe Hughes. Yeah.
Ty Strickland.
I never saw him in practice, so I don't know.
So
I remember his gameplay. Hey,
I mean, who was the guard following Jordan Taylor that was supposed to be really good that transferred to South Dakota State? George Marshall.
No.
Yep.
Was that who it was?
Right.
Was it Marshall?
I think it was George Marshall.
Who was the one that we had from California?
Oh, he wasn't a quick one. Yeah.
George Hill? No, that wasn't the one.
Jordan Hill.
Jordan?
Yeah. That's who it
Regardless,
was.
the point is bearing out to be correct. We don't get many quick players.
Yes.
And it'd be nice to have a guy like McGee coming off the bench that can inject a little bit of quickness and can guard a little quicker player. So
that is clearly a skill that is not high on the coaching staff's list.
They have not found
physical
that
attributes.
One a whole lot. So,
that's why we sit there and watch Daniel Freitag's tape and go and drool heavily when we see him. But Anyway.
So that's our show today, everybody. We kept it right about 30 minutes. Appreciate Justin and John jumping on as always. We went through offensive, defensive positional battles and some basketball players that we think are going to surprise. We will try to continue getting these guys on the show as much as we can, but they obviously have lives as well outside of this. So, gentlemen, I appreciate it so much.
Not a problem.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Locked On Badgers. Make it one of your first listens every day. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Big Ten with host Nate Dickinson as he gets hosts from around the Big Ten, all the latest news and notes covering the conference. With that, everybody, really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you later.